A national push to safeguard the rights of crime victims comes to Georgia. We'll have the latest on a proposed constitutional amendment to ensure that criminals don't have more legal protection than the people they prey on. And speaking of justice, Georgia has hundreds of untested rape kits dating back to the 1970s. We'll talk to a lawmaker who wants to end the backlog and require speedier action going forward. Lawmakers starts right now. Welcome to Day 14 of the 2016 session of the General Assembly. Coming up on the show tonight, two big victim rights issues are drawing bipartisan support this year. But before we get to our discussion on those bills, let's check in down at the Capitol with Shelby Lin for tonight's Capitol Report. Hi, Shelby.
At the Capitol today, Bill, Senator Josh McCoon rolled out the Baptist bloc in support of his religious liberty legislation. It's still tabled in the House. McCoon, though, was a no-show, and as it turned out, there were dueling press conferences both for and against religious liberty measures. Members of the Georgia Baptist Convention gathered under the Gold Dome in support of Senator Josh McCoon's Religious Freedom Restoration Act. The executive director of the Georgia Baptist Missions Board, Dr. J. Robert White, says it's time to pass the measure.
That we believe that the most important legislation before us is that of religious freedom restoration.
Those who spoke at the press conference say they're worried the government will begin discriminating against people of faith. Amir Kaner is the president of the private Christian liberal arts school, Truett McConnell College. He compared it to communism and says his wife knows firsthand about practicing religion under communist rule.
Under communism, she was told when she could worship, where she could worship, how she can practice her faith. And in this country, she moved in 2000, became a citizen in 2013. And the same rights that she fought for, that she saw in the Velvet Revolution of 1989 in the old Czechoslovakia, we are now starting to see these incremental changes in our own country that stands for liberty.
Former Georgia Tech student Ruth Malhotra, who sued the school in 2006 over federal civil rights violations and won, says her lawsuit was really about Tech's discriminatory policies at the time toward Christians.
And while I expected to encounter scholarly debate and have my beliefs challenged at a public university, I didn't expect to be repeatedly censored, interrogated, and condemned by those in authority for expressing a point of view that was not lockstep in line with their own narrow political agenda.
White says there are many examples that show a religious liberty law is very much needed.
Right here, we've heard numerous cases here where people who are of faith have been discriminated against, not only in Georgia, but in the country. And we believe that we need the protection of Religious Freedom Restoration Act in order to protect Christians, people of faith. And I'm talking about people of all faith. We ought to be able to practice our faith without governmental infringement upon our beliefs.
Moments later, a smaller group of religious leaders voiced their opposition to the religious liberty bills, citing their concerns about how it might lead to discrimination, which could also hurt Georgia's business community.
I think that we really have an obligation as people of faith to understand that, in fact, sometimes being a religious person in a free society means that other people also get to live their faith. Other people also get to live their values. And even though some might say that there are limits to those that we need to look at, this legislation is like sending a bazooka after a fly.
I wish we could turn back the clock today. I wish we could start over and have a very different kind of conversation with the folks who preceded us on the stairs. I'm someone who deeply believes in religious liberty. I wish we could go back and all of us colleagues together and begin a conversation again about what religious liberty is.
For me, in a state that is as vulnerable as Georgia, one of the few states in the United States that does not have an anti-discrimination bill, this is not a religious freedom bill. These bills are not about religious freedom. They are the gateway to bigotry and oppression.
And then later, a group called Georgia Republicans for the Future made it clear they believe religious liberty legislation should not be part of the GOP agenda.
The successful agenda of my party is not religious freedom acts or non-discrimination acts. It is advancing the cause of liberty. This group will continue to be engaged as the discussion turns to building a more welcoming, inclusive, and diverse Georgia.
In the Senate today, Senator Charlie Bethel introduced his bill to amend state code and clamp down on repeat offenders in domestic violence cases.
The law today in Georgia states that if an offender has committed a previous offense of family violence, then subsequent offenses may not be treated as misdemeanors. So a serial batterer is going to be charged with felonies after the first conviction. But in practice, the law has two substantial holes.
Bethel says there's been too many cases where repeat offenders were charged with misdemeanors when they deserved a felony conviction and more prison time. The bill, SB 193, was approved by the full Senate on a unanimous vote of 51-0. That bill now goes back to the House for consideration, and we will, of course, continue to follow it. That's it from the Capitol Bill. Back to you.
Thanks, Shelby. Joining me tonight, as he does so often, is our good friend, political writer for the AJC, Jim Galloway, Representative Virgil Fludd, who's a Democrat from Tyrone, Representative Don Parsons from Marietta, and Representative Scott Holcomb, who is from Atlanta. Gentlemen, thank you all so much for being here tonight. You know, we have two issues that have drawn really national attention, are being dealt with in states and cities around the country, and you both are involved in a big way in each of them. If I could start with you, Scott, talk to us about this story that has developed over the last couple of years in which we've been learning about rape kits not being processed, and it's not just a Georgia problem.
It's not, Bill, and thank you. It is a national problem, and they have found tens of thousands of untested rape kits across the country. There's been a lot of work devoted to this issue, and I became involved last year and started working with law enforcement, hospitals, and victims' rights groups to see what we could do here in Georgia. I proposed legislation last year, but there wasn't enough time for it to move, and so then over the summer, continued to work on it, and during that time we learned that just here in Atlanta 1,500 kits were found on shelves. So we know that this is a problem that exists, and the legislation that I'm pushing this year is House Bill 827, and it's designed to set up a process because that process did not exist before.
What is the process?
The process will require hospitals or treatment centers to notify law enforcement within 72 hours after they receive a kit. From that point, law enforcement will have an obligation to pick it up, and then they will have to transfer it to GBI, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, who is fully supportive of this effort, within 30 days. And so we will have a system in place to make sure that kits no longer sit on shelves either in hospitals and treatment centers or at local law enforcement.
Where is this coming from? I mean, is it a problem within hospitals or treatment centers? I mean, is it an attitude toward the reported crime? Is it a holdup in the state labs? Have we underfunded state laboratories? Where's the blockage here?
There are a mix of different factors, and it's difficult to identify exactly what is causing it. One factor is that the Georgia Bureau of Investigation used to only accept kits if there was a suspect. And so law enforcement, my understanding, did not want to acquire the kits unless they had a suspect, because then they weren't able to move it on to GBI. I have heard from hospitals who have asked local law enforcement to come and pick up the kits, and that has not taken place. And what's really troubling about this is that in the majority of cases, these are victims who want to move their cases forward in the criminal justice system, and it's not happening. So it's something that we really have to take action on.
Is there a statute of limitations that applies to these cases?
No, and so they can still move forward with their cases, and there are questions, however, about whether or not the evidence within the kits, the DNA, will start to degrade over time. GBI feels pretty comfortable that depending on the conditions in which they were stored, it should be usable in a criminal context, but that's part of what we need to do to drive these cases forward to make sure that justice is actually brought together.
So let me bring the two of you in on this. You know, we said at the top of this show that this is one of those efforts that appears to have bipartisan support. Are there concerns here of any? I mean, this seems like something that virtually everyone can agree on. Am I wrong about that?
I think you're very right. It's clear that this is not an issue that affects only Democrats or only Republicans or only urbanites or only people in rural areas. It's something that affects people not only in Georgia, but as you mentioned, all across the country.
Well, and I agree as far as the issue is concerned, and I appreciate you bringing that legislation forward. I'm sure that bill will be reviewed very carefully in Judiciary, one of the Judiciary committees. You sit on one of those, don't you?
I don't.
Okay, well, I thought you did.
I probably should.
But it's one of those pieces of legislation that, I appreciate you bringing forward, and I'm sure that they will work with it very carefully in Judiciary and ferret out any kind of problems and vet it very carefully.
Well, that's one. Okay, so that's one of the things that I wondered about. Jim, you've been around watching the legislature for a long time. There are a lot of measures that have great intentions and that seem absolutely the right thing to do. You've said, Representative Holcomb, that you've got the GBI on your side, and that's good because we know, Jim, often agencies start to recoil when they're asked to take on additional responsibilities, no matter how well intentioned.
Right, especially if there's no funding attached to it, and that can be a big concern. And also, look, the legislature has got a lot of lawyers, and some of them are defense attorneys. And, they'll be looking at it from that point of view.
Is there funding? Is there a fiscal note attached to this? Is there new money required for GBI to take on all these additional kits?
No, and I think we're doing this in a very smart, responsible way. One quick thing is that all of the parties who are related to this issue, law enforcement, prosecuting attorneys, chiefs of police, sheriffs, victims' rights groups, hospitals, I've conferred with all of them, and all of them are supportive of the bill because I wanted it to be in a very inclusive manner so we don't get to the committee hearing and then have somebody express an objection. But the other thing that it does is it requires GBI at the end of the year to say this is the number of kits that they have. So then we can make an informed decision going into 2017 if we need to allocate any other dollars.
And we should also point out, because we're showing it on the screen right now, that the feds have earmarked something like $79–80 million for law enforcement in various jurisdictions to be able to take on this added responsibility. Right?
Are hospitals exposed to any kind of liability for holding these kits in place? Because I mean, I'm sure if you're a hospital executive in Georgia, you're paying very close attention to any kind of fiscal responsibility here.
They are very concerned about holding these kits and then nothing happening with them. And so they are very supportive of the legislation because it defines what the responsibilities are. And nobody wants to have an incident like the incident that happened last summer and have that negative publicity that attaches when 1,500 are found on shelves and people are scratching their heads and wondering, how do we get here?
All right, so we'll watch that unfold, and it'll be interesting to see how it's dealt with as you move forward with this bill. Let's look at the other issue that really Representative Parsons takes on national consequences as well. Victims' rights laws. It's part of a nationwide effort called Marsy's Law, named after Marsy Nicholas, who was a California college student stalked and killed by her ex-boyfriend in 1983. Her brother, who co-founded Broadcom Corporation, has since spent apparently millions of dollars bankrolling this effort across the country. You can see on the screen that they want victims to be treated with fairness and respect, to be given timely notice of proceedings, and the right to attend all of the legal proceedings, to be heard at proceedings involving pleas, sentencing, paroles. You can read the rest of them on the screen. So this is what your resolution does.
Right. Well, and I know there is a national movement for it, and I'm glad that there is. There are actually 30 states that have a Victims' Bill of Rights in their Constitution. I have to say, though, this is built upon legislation that I was able to pass about 3 or 4 years ago, a Georgia Victims' Bill of Rights.
Right.
And I want to make sure that I note that that was legislation that I put forward based upon a constituent actually coming to me from my district, who had lost a daughter who had been murdered, and it was that legislation that I passed, that I'm basing this constitutional amendment on, was based on a constituent coming to me from my district who told me that victims didn't have the basic rights to be notified of proceedings that were coming about related to a victim or a surviving family member of a victim. Sometimes weren't allowed to be present in proceedings, and weren't allowed sometimes to actually be heard in those proceedings. So that's where that legislation came from. And just like I mentioned to Scott, that legislation went through judiciary, like I say, about 3 or 4 or 5 years ago maybe. And as with his legislation, which I know that they'll work very hard on perfecting, they worked very hard with me to get that bill passed. It took about 2 years. But defendants and convicted individuals, they have their rights enumerated in the state constitution. And victims should have that same right. They should have their rights enumerated, I believe, in the state constitution.
You know, I noted, Jim, in the Atlanta Constitution this morning, Rhonda Cook, who covers a lot of criminal justice issues for you, had a story about the execution that's scheduled for tomorrow night. And I assume this would apply if your resolution passes. One of the relatives of the victims has applied to be able to attend Oh, I apologize. No, I take that back. It's a relative of the man who's to be executed who wants to be there but not granted that permission. So I apologize for going in the wrong direction on that. Is this legislation that clearly needs to happen as far as you're both concerned?
Well, first of all, I think it's important to note that this is the legislation that is bipartisan. It's not victims that are only Democrats, only Republicans, that people across the state are impacted by this, and I think
you signed on to this bill.
I did sign on to it. It's, I think, good legislation. It memorializes the rights of victims to be heard in court proceedings and bond hearings and parole hearings, and to be notified when there is a defendant that is released from prison, and to be kept from harm should that person be released. And I think it's good legislation that gives us the same standing as most other states in the country.
Does it give them, explain, if one of you gentlemen could explain to me, what's the difference between a provision being in statute and being in the constitutional amendment?
Right.
What upgrade do we have here?
Well, first of all, if it's in the Constitution, it is a right that is guaranteed in the state constitution. It would take a constitutional amendment again to change it. If it's in the statute, it's much easier for that statute to be changed by general law, and also, I think, by interpretation. Whereas if it's in the Constitution, it's a much more solid, definite right given to the victims and the victims' families.
All right. Let's do this. Let's take a break and reset, and we'll come back and talk, among other things. Representative Fludd, I want to give you a chance to talk about the opposition, the line you've drawn in terms of the very controversial campus carry bill that's down at the Capitol right now. And also, I'd like to take a quick look at the new drive to help fund private school scholarships. You might get a tax break for that. We'll talk about the best plan and how it could work. But first, we have another round of Know Your Lawmakers. Sherry Gilligan is a Republican from Cumming. She represents House District 24. Gilligan is one of the newest members of the General Assembly after winning a special election this past summer. She worked in intelligence, including the CIA, for 2 decades, but not surprisingly, shares few details about her actual job. She will say she plays the oboe and wants to visit Paris to see the Mona Lisa. We're back with more Lawmakers in just a moment.
Want to know why? Get the answers you've been seeking on the next Why Wednesday. First, why are these old farms so important to our state? Georgia Outdoors visits 5 farms that have been maintained by the same families for over 100 years. See their secrets to long-term success on Centennial Farms. Next, how do these monkeys survive in the highest forests in the world? Nature uncovers a fascinating society in the Himalayas, the recently discovered mystery monkeys of Shangri-La. Then, what is making all this light in the ocean's darkest depths? Nova and National Geographic team up to explore the various ways these sea creatures light up. and how their special abilities may be useful on land. Don't miss Creatures of the Light. Finally, who are the Nubian kings who conquered the dominant ancient Egyptians? History has left many questions about the Kush dynasty, but new evidence is bringing the truth to light. It's all on the PBS special, Rise of the Black Pharaohs. Catch the latest from the worlds of science and nature on this week's Why Wednesday.
Did you know that the Atlanta City Council is 168 years old today? The first meeting of the council happened on this date in 1848. Atlanta's first mayor, Moses Formwalt, and 6 city council members met in the store of Jonas Smith. He was one of the new council members. And I don't think, frankly, it looks a day over 100 myself. Welcome back to Lawmakers. I'm Bill Nigut. Jim Galloway from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution joins me, as does Representative Virgil Fludd, Representative Don Parsons, and Representative Scott Holcomb. We are in the House of Representatives tonight, and glad that you could all be here. Representative Fludd, let me turn to you. We knew it was coming. Just a week or so, maybe a week or so ago, a bill to allow guns on college campuses, the campus carry bill, which last year failed in the 11th hour of the 40th day, is back. And although we have certainly had advocates of that legislation on, you've been pretty outspoken in your opposition to it.
Well, I think the issue for me is the unintended consequences. I don't know that this has really been thought out very deeply. And you think about the implications of having not just guns on campus and safety, and I know there's a requirement that the person have a permit and be 21 years old, and that's fine. But there are so many other implications. For example, in Florida, it's going to cost the state an additional $75 million just to fund the additional police and storage facilities to manage having guns on campuses there. In Texas, it's going to cost $47 million. I said Florida 74, Texas 47. Even in Arizona, it's going to cost another $10 million. You think about the liability that a school could incur should someone who's got a concealed weapon and without any prior training attempt to thwart a violent act and mistakenly shoots an innocent bystander.
So one of your colleagues, you just said without any training, so I'm curious, one of your colleagues, Representative Waits, has a bill this session, as you know, calling for people who want a concealed carry permit to have training, gun safety training. I don't know that I heard you say this, but if that were to pass, would you be more comfortable with campus carry?
I'm not sure that the campus is the right environment, but it's certainly training actually, for me, should happen with any person who carries a gun. I think it's just wise to know how to use a deadly weapon, no matter if it's in your own home, at a restaurant or bar or anywhere. I think it just makes sense to have some proper training.
Could you talk just a little bit more about the expense associated with this? I mean, is that for gun safes in dormitory rooms? Is it for the expense that accompanies campus? Is it for more police officers?
For more armed police officers, as well as more facilities to store weapons on campuses. So it's for both storage and for additional officers.
Representative Parsons, Republicans have tended to be more, have looked upon expansion of gun carry laws more favorably than Democrats. Have you taken a position on campus carry?
Well, I'm not, I actually have never read the bill, haven't seen the bill. But it's a policy issue as far as passing that particular legislation. And, Representative Fludd makes good points. I would question, again, I would also question the amount of money that you have presented. I'm not questioning you, but it doesn't seem like it would cost that kind of money. But even though it's a policy issue, as far as legislation and what we do in the state of Georgia, it does fall back upon that the Second Amendment right to bear arms. I mean, that's what it falls back upon. I think it's unfortunate and it's sad that we have gotten to the point in our country where there is a need, where people feel like they need to carry on college campuses. And I think that the violence and some of the shootings and things of that nature and things that just happen, on college campuses, involving people that aren't college students. I think a lot of that has brought this on, but the basic right is there to do it. And I think that sometimes the opponents of carrying, whether it's on campus or whatever, they sometimes do kind of forget about that is a basic constitutional right that can be administered and regulated somewhat.
But Mr. Fludd, we've had this argument since, as far as I can remember, since 2007.
Yeah.
We were poised. The Senate was poised to act on it, and then we had the massacre at Virginia Tech. Right. I mean, has anything in the last calendar year, so far as you know, changed the dynamics of this? I mean, Governor Nathan Deal has said that he's very uncomfortable with it. What has changed since we last addressed this?
The only thing that I can see, that I haven't spoken to the author to know what's the motivation for this year, but 2016 is an election year.
Okay.
Well, that sometimes is a cause.
Right. Jim, you're down at the Capitol every day. Board of Regents, of course, fought this furiously last session and won. Do we expect they're going to be back in there with the same intensity to try to stop it this year? And are the opponent or the people who support it better prepared to fight them off this session?
What I'm picking up is that latter case is correct. That the proponents of this bill are a lot more prepared. They're going to push a lot harder. It is an election year. We've got number of conservative issues pushing through. This is likely to be one.
Yeah, Representative Hope, we haven't given you a chance to weigh in on this.
Well, I think the first thing that I would say is this is a difficult issue, and as Chairman Parsons pointed out, there's a Second Amendment right at stake. But Justice Scalia, who is not known for being liberal, and one of the main Supreme Court cases on this clearly said that the Second Amendment can be limited in time and place. And one of the places where it makes sense to limit firearms is on college campuses. So that is the law of the land, and that's why it has been the law here in Georgia. And what I'm sensitive to is to listen to the Chancellor, to listen to the Board of Regents, and to listen to teachers. Okay. I have a number of teachers in my district. I represent teachers who teach at both Emory and Georgia Tech, and I haven't met one of them, to include many extremely conservative Republicans who are supportive of this idea.
All right, we are really fast running out of time, and I mentioned during as we went to the break, Jim, your paper this morning had a lead story, a proposal for $25 million in additional funding, needs-based funding for students who need help to go to private schools. The question here, and we'll discuss this more fully on another show, question is, even if people love it, is there money to do it?
Well, and that's always, this is operating outside the budget cycle. And this happens a lot in the legislature, where you pass these very, very tasty bills that everybody loves, or at least enough people love to pass it, and then the money to fund it never shows up.
Right. Well, you know what? We're going to have the two budget chairs on this show next Wednesday, a week from Wednesday night. We'll talk to Terry England and Jack Hill about how they're feeling about a proposal like this. If you have ideas for them, what you want funded, let me know. I'll get it to you. Look, we're out of time tonight, and I appreciate you so much for being here. Don Parsons, Scott Holcomb, Virgil Fludd. Thanks for your participation in the show. Have a great session.
Thank you. Thanks, Bill.
So that does it for day 14 of the 2016 session. And Jim Galloway, great to have you here, too. I should have said that. We've still got a long ways to go. As always, you can track us on Facebook and Twitter at GPB News. Check out our website, gpb.org/lawmakers, where you can find full episodes of our show and a lot of additional information. And don't miss our GPB Political Rewind radio show, live every Wednesday at 2, every Friday at 3. Galloway is at my side. Thank goodness for that. It's a terrific show. Thanks for joining us tonight. See you again tomorrow. I'm Bill Nigut.